name is Samantha Patterson.
Spike, what do you do for a living?
Well, I dropped out of high school after the untimely death of my father to help support my family. But work is hard to find, and currently I'm unemployed.
And why exactly did you have to drop out of high school?
Well, after my father died and my mom was sick, we had a lot of bills, a lot was going on, and someone had to make money from my family, and we had to provide for them. I didn't want their lives to have to change just because my father passed away.
What have you done recently to provide for your family?
There are jobs you can do around town, cleaning, babysitting, for people that need services like that. Also, if you really have to, there are people you can go to for loans.
You ever gone to anyone for a loan?
Yes, I have.
Who have you gone to?
I've gone to Bobby Baccalaureate in the past for loans, and it got really hard, and I couldn't find a job.
No, Spike, would you take a second to tell the jury about your relationship with Bobby Baccalaureate?
Bobby was always willing to loan me the money when we needed it when our family was in a hard time. But as time went on, it got harder and harder for me to pay him back. And I was working, but I didn't have enough money. Bobby became more and more insistent on getting his payment and getting it quickly. And I didn't always have all the money he wanted by the time he wanted it.
Would he ever make threats to you?
Yes.
How would you?
Bobby would threaten me, or if I still couldn't get him his money, he would threaten my family, my mom, people I cared about.
Ms. Spike, let's talk about the evening of January the 26th. What do you recall that day?
I had talked to Bobby earlier that day. I knew I was supposed to meet him at the top of the Melville parking deck at 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, I was to the top of the parking deck.
When you got there, was talking to you already?
Yes. When I got to the top of the parking deck, Bobby's blinking continental was already back in his face.
No. Was there anyone else on the top of the deck that night?
I could see another figure in Bobby's car, but I couldn't make out who it was.
And when you got there, you were approaching?
I didn't have to. When Bobby saw me come out of the entrance to the stairs, he got out of his car and he was with me.
What did he say when you approached him?
Bobby immediately started about how I owed him money. It was time for me to pay up. I was just trying to explain that I needed a little bit more time. I would get him all of his money. I just didn't have it together yet.
What happened next?
Bobby was still insistent on me paying, telling me it was time to pay. And then when I tried to explain, he didn't listen. He pulled out his gun and pointed at me.
Now, Ms. Pike, you brought a gun to the garage.
No, I did not.
What was going through your head?
I was panicking. I was terrified. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have Bobby's money. I was trying to tell him that I just needed more time. I was going to get his money.
What happened next?
Bobby and I went back and forth, and I grabbed the gun away from him out of his hand so he couldn't point at me anymore.
Now, you grabbed the gun. Ms. Pike, do you recall exactly where you grabbed that gun?
I grabbed the gun away from Bobby at the top on the sliding thing.
And what happened when you got it away from him?
After I got the gun, Bobby was taunting me. He was telling me how he knew I didn't have it in me to shoot him, and I wasn't going to shoot him. I didn't shoot him. I didn't want to shoot him. I threw the gun behind the elevator where he never let me do.
Did you make it out the safe way after that?
I ran towards the entrance of the south stairs, but when I got to the doorway, I fell and cracked my knee.
Ms. Pike, do you remember when you double cracked your knee, bled at all?
Yes, yes, it did.
The quick which in the garage where you at that point?
I was at the south end of the garage, opposite where I met Bobby.
All right, then what happened after you fell in?
After I fell and I was on the ground, I heard a noise from the other side of the parking deck where I had been before. I turned around and I saw Bobby and some other person, and they were arguing.
Now, the other person, you mentioned there was someone in the car earlier. Was that person in the car still there?
Yeah, this was a different person.
What do you remember about that video?
I couldn't make out his face. The person was wearing a black bomber jacket and heavy set boots.
What happened between that person and Bobby?
They were arguing, and then I saw the person push Bobby backward over the that was the first step.
And you said you were arguing. Do you recall anything specifically?
I overheard something about loyalty and a cousin, but otherwise I just,
Objection, this question was for hearsay and rule 801.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement being used in court with the truth of the matter asserted. First of all, there's no truth value in this statement. Something about Bobby and cousin. Second of all, we wouldn't be using the truth of the matter asserted, rather for its effect on the listener.
Rather than its words effect.
For its effect on the listener's side.
Anything else?
I guess these are actually out-of-court statements offered for the truth of the matter. They were trying to insinuate that there was another individual that night arguing with Bobby about a cousin. So these are offered for the truth of the matter asserted and therefore are hearsay.
Let's explain the objection.
Ms. Pike, what happened after that?
after they argued, Bobby was pushed over by the dad, the apartment back and fell down the 9 stories.
Now, you made that safely after that.
Objection, Your Honor. This question has already been asked and answered.
I don't believe I have. I asked her if she tried to make that safely earlier. That was before she got it.
I'm going to overrule.
Did you?
After Bobby fell, I went in on the south stairs and went home.
Now, anything else memorable happened that night?
Later that night, 2 cops came and knocked on my door and asked me to go to the station with any questions.
Ms. Pike, you met these 2 cops before?
I had not met those 2 cops before, I just didn't know them, but after I got to the station, I talked to Lieutenant Kane, whom I had spoken with before.
So, what can you tell the jury about your relationship with Lieutenant Walton King?
Lieutenant Kane had questioned me a couple months before about a gang shooting that had happened in my neighborhood. He questioned me several times, but I didn't have anything to do with it, and I told him that.
What do you remember about this attitude towards you that time?
Kane didn't really seem to listen. He seemed to...
Objection, Your Honor. This question calls for speculation under 602.
Your Honor, the witness has direct personal knowledge of whether or not he was listening to the examination as to how she believed that he was not listening, which I believe she will.
I think she's testified as to her perception, so I'm going to overrule the objection.
I'll ask you, why did you think he was listening?
Well, I had talked to Kane before. I told him that I didn't have anything to do with that shooting. I was not part of that gang. I didn't know anything about it. But he continued to question me. He seemed really insistent on me being part of it.
Ms. Pike, were you completely honest with Lieutenant King on that occasion?
Yes.
And when you talked to him on January 26th, what do you remember about that conversation?
When I went in to talk to Kane, I was still scared after what I had seen happen. He asked me some questions, and then he seemed to grow angry. He yelled at me, asking me several questions, and I was scared and confused and ready to go home.
Now, to the best of your understanding, what was the nature of that conversation that you had with him?
I was told that it was a friendly chit chat.
Ms. Pike, were you completely honest with Lieutenant King that time?
No, I was not.
Can you explain why you were honest?
I was terrified after what I had seen happen to Bobby on the parking deck, and I've been there. I saw it happen. I didn't know who pushed him off. I was scared after I had talked to him before. I didn't think he was going to listen to me, and I didn't know what to do.
Ms. Pike, you understand that you're under oath, right?
Yes.
Tell us, what is the truth about what happened?
I knew Bobby, and I was at the parking deck the night he died, and I saw someone push him off that parking deck. I saw that happen. I saw him arguing, but I was on the other side of the parking deck when that happened, and I'm not the one that pushed Bobby over the edge. I'm not the one that killed Bobby.
No. Do you have any reason whatsoever to kill Bobby back in the day?
No, I did not.
Thank you, Ms. Pike.
Ross?
Yes, sir. Now, Ms. Pike, you took out a letter from Bobby Rocker Larry.
Yes, I did. Times got really hard for my family. After my father died, the little one was sick. So he had to pay the bills. And yes, I did take out one.
And you said that you're in business with Bobby was like 7 years old.
Doing business with Bobby definitely felt like selling your soul. You owed him money, and how hard she worked. He wanted his payment, he wanted it by a certain time, and there were other bills to be paid, and it felt hard to do.
You would bring him some money, but you just said the payment was late and out of interest.
Bobby did that a lot.
So you do what you have to do to pay up, right?
I worked really hard to earn money to be able to pay both Bobby and the bills from my mom's medical expenses and the rent and stuff like that.
That's yes, you do what you have to do to pay up.
Yes.
Now, opposing counsel talked to you, asked you a couple questions about the threats from Bobby.
Yes.
And he threatened you through text message.
Yes, he did.
And these text messages were before, a couple days before, and on the day of the events that happened on January 26th.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'm questioning opposing counsel was whether the previously marked as exhibit 9. May I finish the witness?
You may.
You recognize this document,
Yes.
and you recognize this document as the text messages that you exchanged with Bobby Bach and Larry from January 23rd to the 26th.
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I'm going to tender it. And these text messages fairly and accurately depict text messages that you exchanged with Bobby on those days.
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I'm going to tender Exhibit 8, Exhibit 9. It's accuracy on this you have been stipulated.
The judge.
Yes, Your Honor, we object on grounds of hearsay, while the format of the texting, which messages were sent at which times, and by which people are authentic and accurate. The content of the messages themselves are hearsay separately from that. We object to that.
The statements made by Ms. Pipe are her own statements, and she testified about those in court here today. Now, the statements made by Bobby Bach and Larry, here there has been, go to, or an exception to hearsay under Rule 8.32, excited utterance. As opposing counsel has made clear, Bobby was threatening the defendant. He was angry, and therefore these statements were an excited utterance, and therefore an exception under 8.32.
If I may respond.
You may.
The defense believes that a little bit further foundation should be laid to say that these are excited utterance. It's obviously a gray area because these were in fact text messages. It's difficult to say that a text message was an excited utterance.
I'm going to admit the document. I'm not sure that the exception that you cited is necessarily the best one applicable, but I believe that it is useful as an exception to hearsay. With respect to Bobby Bach and Larry.
Now, in these text messages, Bobby threatened you,
Yes, he did.
and he threatened your mother.
Yes, he did.
And in response to this, you replied, you, in all capital letters, you leave my mama out of this, Bobby. This is between you and me.
Yes, I didn't want my mom to have any part of this. She's not the person that went to Bobby for the loan. I am.
And now, later in these text messages, Bobby demanded that you leave on the top of the parking garage to sell your dad.
Yes.
And he told you not to really for short.
Yes, he did.
And in response to this, you replied, fine, but this is it one way or another. Now, so on January 26, 2015, you were at the top of the parking garage.
Yes, I was.
You met with Bobby.
Yes, I did.
You fought with Bobby at the scene.
Yes, after Bobby pointed his gun at me and threatened me with it, yes, so,
And during this fight, Bobby's feet went out from under him.
yes, he did.
And after this happened, you pointed Bobby's gun at him.
Yes, I didn't want Bobby to be able to point the gun at me anymore, so,
And while pointing this gun at him, you shouted, "Leave me alone."
yes, I was very scared at that point after Bobby had threatened me after I never had known if he wanted, so I did say that.
And on the rest, you said that this is when you threw the gun behind the elevator shaft.
Yes,
And you didn't see anybody else behind the elevator shaft.
no, I didn't, but there was an elevator there.
Behind the elevator shaft
I
this time.
couldn't see one.
In fact, you hadn't seen anyone else up there all night.
Not besides the person that was in Bobby's car.
Yet you testified here today that you saw another individual push Bobby over the edge that night.
After I threw the gun behind the elevator shaft, I ran to the opposite side of the parking deck where I fell down. when I got up and turned around, there was another figure with Bobby that had not been there before.
Now, so you're testifying here for today that you saw Bobby Bacalera get tossed off the edge of the parking lot.
I saw someone with Bobby.
You saw Bobby get tossed, that's a yes.
Yes.
You remember this night experience, right?
Yes, I did.
You're opposing counsel with a statement of Samantha Pike. Specifically line 113. May I finish the initial then? Now you recognize this document. And you recognize this document as your statement.
Yes.
And this is your signature right here.
Yes, it is.
And by signing this document, you agree that you have reviewed this statement previously made by you,
Yes.
that you have nothing of significance to add at this time,
Yes.
and that the material facts are true and correct.
Yes.
Now, can you please read silently as I read aloud line 113, Ms. White? Yeah, I was there, but I left before Bonnie got tossed. I read that correctly.
Yes, you did.
Now, I'm going to ask you the question one more time, Ms. Pike. You saw another individual toss Bobby off the edge of the parking garage.
Yes, I did. When I wrote in my statement that I left before Bobby got tossed, I left the area of the parking garage where I had originally met Bobby. I met Bobby on the north entrance of the stairs, on the north side of the parking deck. When Bobby was pushed across, or was pushed off the parking deck, I was on the south side at that point.
So you're testifying here today that you saw Bobby get tossed off.
Yes, I am.
And you're sure about that statement as every other statement you made here today.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the statements you made here today. You talked about cleaning and babysitting, but nowhere in your statement did you ever talk about that.
Correct.
You talked about touching the gun on the slide, but you never talked about that in your statement.
I talked about grabbing the gun away from Bobby.
But you never specified where.
No.
And also, you talked about an interview with opposing counsel that you had with Lieutenant King.
Yes, I did.
Now, all throughout this interview, you lied.
Yes, I admitted to lying to Lieutenant King when he talked to me after what happened.
You lied about where you were that night,
Yes, I did. I was scared at that point.
what you were doing,
Yes.
who you were with,
Yes.
your relationship with Bobby.
Your Honor, the objection relevance under Rule 401, in this building, Rule 402, the ultimate issue here is that she was dishonest. That's already been asked and answered. The details of which things she was dishonest about at that point no longer matter in our development.
Your Honor, Mr. State, we have the burden in this case, and we have the right to present every and all evidence against the defendant, including every single lie that she told to Lieutenant King during his investigation of this crime.
Objection overruled. Thank you.
Now, I'll ask you a question one time. You even lied about your relationship with Bobby.
Yes, I did.
And now, throughout the interview, you said that Lieutenant King told you they had an eyewitness. But he never, you said it, he told you it was Bonnie Bacalera. But nowhere throughout the transcript of the interview did Lieutenant King mention Bonnie Bacalera's name at all. And if you'd like, here's the interview right here. If you would like to look through it. And Your Honor, I would like to state for the record that under stipulation 11, this document is true, correct, and accurate. So that's a yes. Lieutenant King never mentioned Bonnie Bacalera's name at all.
And it's not.
Now, after the examination, you also said that Lieutenant King yelled at you during this interview.
I felt like he was partially yes.
No, you stated that he yelled at you.
Yes, I did say that.
But once again, nowhere in this transcript of the interview does it say that Lieutenant King yelled at you. In fact,
Objection, Your Honor, this is a transcript. Properties Lieutenant King's voice are obviously not going to be stated.
Your Honor, I have a thought. In fact, it's noted right here that someone was yelling during this interview. And that was the defendant, Samantha Pike, yelling, in parentheses, "You fact, the tone of voice was indicated in this transcript.
Objection overruled.
So the only person yelling in this interview was you. That's a yes. Now, this was the last interaction that you had with Lieutenant King before he arrested you the next morning.
Yes, it was.
And when he arrested you, you shouted at him, "What? You're crazy, King. I just talked to you and told you I wasn't there. I was home all night."
Yes, as I stated before, I did like to do that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Brief question. Ms. Pike, you were asked about the text message you sent to Bobby. You told Bobby, fine, that this is it, one way or another. Can you clarify what you mean when you said that?
When I told Bobby that was it one way or another, I knew going into that meeting that I didn't have all of Bobby's money. I didn't have it all together. I needed more time. I told Bobby that. What I had with me going in was it. That was all I was going to have by the time I met Bobby, and I knew that, and I tried to explain that to him.
Now, you were also asked about your statement that you left before Bobby got tossed. What do you mean by that again?
When I first met Bobby, we were on the north side of the parking deck. That's where he pointed his gun, that's where I threw the gun behind the elevator. Then I ran to the opposite side of the parking deck, to the south side, or to the south end. And so yes, I had left the north side of the parking deck by the time Bobby fell over.
Thank you, Ms. Pike. Nothing further.
Okay, stay there. I'm sorry, the defense rest.
Just sign the defense rest.
It's not closing argument.